Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. In today's video we are going to be utilizing some acetate or laminating sheets and pouches to create an open panel on a card today. So doing something just a little bit different as far as design, and let's go ahead and get into it. So I have the Simon Says Stamps Sunflower Fields stamp set that has stencils and a coordinating die. We're going to be using that kind of cluster of three sunflowers there. This is a laminating pouch that I had left over from when I was making stuff for craft fairs, and I kept that, and I'm going to use those in today's project. But you can use recycled packaging, you can use just acetate sheets, it doesn't matter. You just want something clear and fairly sturdy. I have the Spellbinders Tufted 3D embossing folder. I have been eyeing this thing for like ever, and it was just never in stock, or it was in stock and I just didn't have the funds, but I finally got my hands on it. This is the Trinity Stamps Vintage Tin Tile Foil Plate. We're going to be using that not foiling, but as dry embossing. Here I'm showing you that this Sunflower Fields set has coordinating dies that coordinate with not only the sentiments, but some of the images there. It does not have a coordinating die for that large sunflower, or at least I don't have that. To start off, I'm going to be stamping on some scrap HAMMERMILL cardstock, this cluster of three. I wanted something that was going to be big enough to span my little acetate window, but not take up a whole lot of space. And so I went through my stash and I found this and I thought it was perfect. So I'm stamping this a couple of times in Gina K Obsidian Amalgam ink, and I'm going to do this twice. We're going to make 2 cards today, and this is just some scrap HAMMERMILL cardstock I have on hand. And then I'm going to set that off to the side to dry. I do end up heat setting it just to ensure that it is indeed dry, but you don't have to necessarily do that. I have just found that that helps me, particularly when I go to color it. I picked a couple of sentiments from that same Sunflower Fields stamp set, and I'm stamping those in VERSAFINE Onyx Black ink just because that is a really deep, rich black, and I really wanted that. Notice that I left that image of the sunflowers in my MISTI. I did not move it. We are going to go back and stamp that again. And so I kept everything in place how I had it. I went ahead and separated out my sentiment dies and the coordinating die for those cluster of 3, and we're going to do some die cutting. We're also going to be doing some dry embossing and some using an embossing folder. So I have some Cardstock Warehouse cardstock here. This green one, I apologize, I don't know the color of that, but that light blue green one is COLORPLAN's powder green. I'm going to lightly mist these with some water, and I'm going to run them through my die cut machine. So this is the vintage tin tile from Trinity Stamps. I have yet to use this as a foil plate, but that was its intended purpose. And then here is this gorgeous 3D tufted one from Spellbinders. That one I probably would never use the back, but on the vintage tin tile, that back was actually really pretty. One of the things that I love about this particular stamp set, we're going to be doing some artist marker coloring with my Altenew artist markers. These are alcohol markers, but you can use whatever color medium you prefer. This Gina K ink is pretty much safe for everything once it's heat set, or once it's dry. So I'm just going to do flat color. There are some exceptions. The leaves, I do try to do some blending, and that large center flower, I try to do just a little bit of blending, but you really don't have to because this stamp is so detailed. If you were using a stamp that wasn't quite as detailed, you may want to do some blending, but because this has so many lines and details on it, you really wouldn't have to if you didn't want to. So I try to zoom in just a little bit here so you can see a little better. Like I said, I'm not doing any fancy coloring. I will list all of the colors of artist markers I did use below. I pulled some from some of the new sets that I purchased. It's really hard to see here in the video. I think it's a little clearer in the pictures, but because there's so much detail, you really don't have to do a whole lot of shading and blending. So if you're in a time crunch, this is a good stamp to go to, or go through your stash and find ones that have a lot of like line detail on them, because you don't have to do a whole lot of blending if you don't want to, or if that's like not your jam. If you're not comfortable with that, or you just don't have the time, look for stamp sets that are like this one. This is real time. I am not a fast colorer. This is not really my forte, so I go pretty darn slow. But I'm just doing kind of the darkest color of my 4-color blend on the left, the next darkest on the right, and then on this middle one, I'm using the second and third darkest on this flower. For the next one, because we're making 2 cards, I do end up using all 4 of the quad in that particular set. And again, I will list all of those below on what colors I did use. So again, just applying flat color through this one. And because of that detail, you can see that you really wouldn't have to. It looks like it has natural highlights and natural dark spots and shading, just because of all that detail. But if you wanted to get fancy, if you love to color, if you wanted to bump up the depth, have at it. Here I'm bringing in the third darkest color and just adding a little bit of shading, but again, you don't have to if you don't want to. And then we're going to do the same thing with the leaves. For the leaves, I'm applying the darkest color where all of the dark lines are, and then just kind of adding subsequently lighter colors around, just so that we get some variation there. You could do like a dark and a light over just each individual like leaf. Just pick a leaf that you wanted to be dark and pick a leaf you wanted to be light and just use one color over that. That would be an option. That is also something that you could do. I chose to kind of use 3 different colors on each of these leaves just to give them just a little bit more interest. But there are several options, like I said, you could do for those. And then once these leaves are colored, I'm done with this image. And then I'm going to move on to the next one. Here is the second colorway, all colored in. Like I said, I will list all of the ones below. I didn't feel like there was enough contrast with that flower on the right, and so I did bring in Colorless Blender just to try to lighten that a little bit, give it a little more difference between that dark and that next color. So remember how I said I left in the flower in my Misty? The reason why I did that is because that Gina K ink isn't like super dark, and I wanted it to be this deep, rich, dark black. So I'm going to take my VERSAFINE Onyx Black ink, make sure that that is right back where I had it before, and I'm going to stamp this down, and I'm going to show you a comparison. And I only stamped this once because that's really all it needed. So if you can see, that top one just looks so much better. It just looks so much, there looks like there's more depth in there, and I did more coloring than I actually did, just because that deep, dark, rich black from that VERSAFINE Onyx Black ink just adds in so much depth. I really, really like that ink, and I really like this method because I can't alcohol marker color with this VERSAFINE Onyx Black ink, but I can with the Gina. So moving on to adding our acetate sheet, I'm going to let that VERSAFINE Onyx Black ink dry. So what I'm doing here is kind of getting an idea on how big I want this acetate kind of strip to be. And so I'm just eyeballing it. I'm not measuring, although you could, and I do end up measuring later on. And I just put a couple of pencil lines, and then I'm taking this card, I've opened it up, and I'm taking it to my paper trimmer, and I am trimming around those 2 lines. I'm going to keep that one on the right, but this one in the that I just kind of chucked off to the side, I don't need that for this particular card. So I'm going to keep these 2, and I'm going to keep them together, and I'm going to repeat this process for the same one, for the next card. So I'm just going to kind of eyeball, give me an idea on how big I want this panel to be, and use this first one kind of as a template, and cut out that middle kind of strip from these card bases. Now I'm taking the laminating pouches that I had left over, although, like I said, you could use acetate or any kind of clear recycled packaging, and I'm taking that to my paper trimmer, and I am making sure it is about 5.5 inches long, but I'm making it about 4 inches tall. I'm not entirely sure why I did that. I think, because of the fold of the card. I didn't want the acetate to interfere with the fold. So I did make it about 4 inches tall instead of 4.5, or excuse me, 4.25. I made it 4 by about 5.5 inches. I do end up having to trim these down, the final cards down a little bit, just because I didn't have things very straight. So I do end up having to do a little bit of trimming, but these acetate panels are about 4 by 5.5. So now I'm going to take some tape runner, and I am applying the tape runner to that larger flap on our card base, and I'm setting up the acetate panel to where it's not interfering with the fold. And then you can see that I have a little bit of that back part of the card base sticking out. That's not a big deal. I am going to take that scrap that we kind of chucked off to the side that was the part that we cut out, and I'm just going to use that to kind of clean up the inside of the card. You can see the adhesive, and so I wanted it to have a cleaner and more finished look on the inside, so I'm taking that and just covering that up. And then for the kind of bottom part, I'm going to take that same tape runner and I'm going to apply a strip of that. This is with the card base open, and this is the inside of it. And I'm going to apply some more of that about 1 inch panel that we cut off, that we kept. And I'm just making sure that this is going to be about 4.25. So when I line it up, I had it open and I had it on my, the middle of my grid mat. And I was using the grids on my mat to help me figure out how, to make sure I had it lined up correctly and that this was going to measure 4.25 tall. So then I took a ruler and I just kind of measured out how big that top panel needed to be and how big that bottom section needed to be, because this is going to go over the top of this. Like I said, I do have to do a little bit of trimming, and I ended up gluing on the wrong thing to the wrong side, but that is just between me and you and all of YouTube. I'm a professional. Anyway, so I'm going to take some liquid glue and just glue these panels to this white section, and I'm going to use liquid glue for that. For this bottom one, I probably should have used more of that tape runner, but the liquid glue just used was fine. I just ended up taking my magnets and kind of setting that down. It just takes a little bit longer for it to dry. But I'm just measuring and making sure that I have these right, and then I'm going to glue them down in place. And this is gluing them down to the front of the card. So you will actually see these when the card is closed, because they're going to be on the front of the card. So here I'm just making sure, and I did take some of those scraps of the embossed panels that we had and glued those to the inside of the card just so that I could use everything that I had and to kind of give the inside of the card just a little bit more interest. So this is actually just a scrap panel that I'm gluing to the inside of the card. And I'm just trying to center it. Again, I didn't cut things exactly straight, so I'm just trying to center it a little bit here. And then that bottom one is going to be the white, and then I'm going to close the card and glue more of those measured tufted panels to the front. So here's that liquid glue. We're just going to glue this to the front of the card. This is with the card closed, so we are definitely gluing this to the front. And here I discover that I glued the wrong panel to the wrong part, but that's fine. We can just use our trimmer and cut that off. So here we have it with our card closed and all of our embossed panels on the front. To continue to assemble, you can see where the alcohol marker bled through the paper. So that is why when I did all my die cutting, I die cut out 2 of everything. I die cut out 2 of the sentiment and I cut out 2 of the flowers, just so that I could clean that up so you wouldn't see any of that alcohol marker when the card was opened. You wouldn't see the bleed through. So everything has been glued, including two of the sentiments and two of the flowers. So I laid this on the closed card panel. So because I don't want to have to add more to this and get this even more bulky, I'm strategically applying my glue. And I'm applying my glue to the bottom flower and to that top flower. So nothing in the middle has glue. If you do, you're going to be able to see the glue when the card is opened. Unless you go back and add some more cardstock panels, which you can do if you get a little ham, if you go a little ham with your glue, you can go back and do that. So here I did the same thing. I saw where I needed to apply my liquid glue, and that's where I'm applying it. So there's no glue that's going to be visible when this card is flipped open. The next thing I'm going to do is show you an alternative way to apply adhesive. So if I were to apply liquid glue to this, you would see it. And I don't want to do that. So I have a little 2-inch XRON sticker maker here. These are still on the market. I got mine at Hobby Lobby, and you can find the refills anywhere. So how this works is you put that to where the pretty side, or the side you want to have seen, is facing up towards you, and then you feed this through and kind of pull out from the bottom. You tear it off, and then you burnish like a madman. I just have my bone folder here, and I'm burnishing, and I'm making sure that I'm getting kind of right around the edges of these die cut sentiments. And remember, these are too high, so it doesn't affect the application of your adhesive at all to have kind of dies stacked together. But this applies adhesive to the whole thing. The next part is to just peel off this little backer here, which I struggled with for a minute there, but I eventually got it off. Here we go. You just peel that off, and that leaves, the rest of that is actually sticky, except for where your little die cuts were. And now essentially what you've done is create yourself a sticker. And I'm going to apply these to the clear parts, or the acetate parts of these cards, and just kind of get them centered where I want them. And then you'll discover when you open the card that you cannot see the adhesive. So that is another way to apply adhesive to acetate without it being seen, not unless you don't mind seeing the adhesive. Maybe that doesn't bother you. Maybe it's not enough to bother you. To each their own, but I didn't want my adhesive to be visible. So before you really burnish it down, you can pick it up as you saw me do just there. I wasn't happy with where my hello was placed, so I did pick that up. And I'm showing you here that you cannot see the adhesive. So that's just another alternative to helping you apply adhesive. We're in the home stretch here, so the final thing, I'm going to apply these sandy blush enamel dots to this card, and then I went through my stash and found some gems I think I got off of Amazon. They kind of have an iridescent shine to them, and I'm going to apply these gems and these little adhesive enamel dots to these cards. And then we've got one more thing. I felt like these needed just a little bit of sparkle. So the final thing I'm going to do is take my Spectrum Noir clear glitter brush pen and just apply some glitter to the flowers. I'm not applying it to the leaves or to the flower centers, just to the flowers themselves. There I showed you the, you can see that the middle of the card is open. One of the things I am including, because these are cards that I will sell or try to sell, I am including a 4x5 inch piece of cardstock, so that if people didn't want to see the writing, if they had a longer message, they can write their message on that instead of directly to the card base, so that this can be standing on display and you can see it. Although some of you may not mind writing kind of where people can see it when the card is closed. So here is that Spectrum Noir clear glitter brush pen, again, just over the leaves of the petals of the flowers. And then these cards are complete. So thank you so much for spending time with me today. I hope you felt inspired. I hope you feel inspired to kind of dig through your scrap stash of acetate and packaging and recycle it and put it to good use. So again, I appreciate your time, and we will see you next time. Bye.